Hey everybody, welcome. Fall 2025 update here. Been out of town for 4 out of the last 8 weeks, so zero work done on the layout. However, there's been a little bit of a revolution when it comes to couplers. If you haven't heard of the N possible coupler, about 2 months ago, friends Mike, Carl, and Hars came up from down south, and we tested the coupler out on the layout here. Really impressed with the way it operated. So we were soon on what we call the Trans-Canada Coupler Conference with Andrew Tyhurst, the developer of the coupler. We went from Toronto to Vancouver on the Canadian and visited Gary Hinshaw and his Tehachapi layout in the Vancouver area. Gary's got about 200 pieces of rolling stock converted, and we ran the snot out of his layout, and it only amped up the excitement that we felt for this coupler. I got home from that trip, spent a couple weeks at home, and then I was off to the RPM meet in Naperville where we tested the coupler some more. I got home from that meet and immediately started converting rolling stock. This is push one. Push one's been done, and there's a new train on the layout that's testing out all kinds of different scenarios here. So this is a westbound BNSF coal train that originated in the Powder River Basin. This train would be routed to Billings, up the Moss Main through Great Falls and on to Shelby. At Shelby, it would be handed off to the Sweetgrass Railroad. Now, the Sweetgrass is a short line that Mike, Carl, Hars, and I talked about and dreamt up while they were up here. In essence, they took over the track between Shelby on the High Line and the Montana-Alberta border at Sweetgrass/Coots. This train would be forwarded up to the border with the power intact. Now, for the units to lead in Canada, they would have to be equipped with Canadian compliant cabs, meaning they need a hot plate and a fridge. BNSF equipped several units for the service, 5801 being one of them. After crossing the border, the train would head north from Coots up to Montana Junction, turn left across the Crow's Nest sub, the Cranbrook sub, and turn north up the Windermere sub at Fort Steele. At the end of the Windermere sub, it would intersect the CP main line at Golden, where it would continue west for eventual unloading at the Roberts Bank Export Terminal. Now, this isn't that far from reality, as BNSF did run a few coal trains on this very routing. So this is the first BNSF westbound coal train over the layout. It's also the first real testbed for the N possible coupler. About 20 of the 54 cars have been converted, half a dozen on each end and 8 in the middle. The cars in the middle are there because I want to test out manned helper operations. The majority of westbound trains on the layout do require helpers, so this is a very important test. I'm very curious how these couplers will perform with locomotives on the head end, midpoint, and tail end. The lead units are going to drag the first 28 cars ahead, making room for the pushers to get out onto the main line. They'll then back down onto the back half of the train, acquire the DPU, and then pull forward, coupling onto the front half. Now, because these are a scale-size coupler, a regular uncoupling pick isn't going to work. Andrew suggests sewing pins, and with a little practice, it's easy to get these things apart. These couplers really shine when putting a train back together. It requires almost no pressure to get a good joint. True kiss coupling. Now, it does take some care when building and installing these couplers to get this level of reliability, but the results are well worth the effort. Once the helpers are tied onto the back half of the train, they'll drag it forward and couple onto the front. This takes place on a curved section of the main line, so I have to use the uncoupling pick to line the drawbar to couple up to the car in front. This was necessary when I had Microtrains couplers on here. It's also necessary on the prototype. Once everything's back together, we can tackle the 1.85%. The grade relents just east of the Burmis siding. The train will roll through Burmis, coming to a stop with the helpers just east of the crossovers. The helpers will use these crossovers to get cut out of the train and escape over onto the siding track. Now, as mentioned, a traditional pick isn't going to work to get these couplers apart. What I'm using here is a sewing pin jammed into the end of a piece of scrap 16th inch dowel that I had laying around the shop. With a little experience, making a cut isn't so much about seeing what you're doing as feeling what you're doing. Once the cut's made, the front half of the train will pull ahead, clearing the crossovers. Push one will drag the back half of the train up to the crossovers, cut the rear half, and then escape over to the siding. Both crossover switches will then be aligned for normal operation, and the crew on push 1 will call 5801 back to a joint. Once put back together, the head end crew will reacquire the DPU on the tail end of the train, obtain an OCS clearance from the RTC, and continue westward. So how did the test go? Well, once I saw how this train performed, I ordered an additional 250 pairs, if that says anything. Now, not only do these couplers look fantastic, but they operate just as well. I think the main reason for that is they stay aligned better than any coupler on the market currently. They also, because of their size, have far less slack. Now, the alignment issue is really important when you're operating DPUs. Because these couplers stay in alignment under buff, there's no lateral force on the car. All the force is directed down the center line. That's going to massively increase reliability because you no longer have that lateral pressure, forcing the flanges tight up against the railhead. And the slack issue? Well, that's not just aesthetic. Excess slack in the older couplers can lead to a draft buff draft uncoupling. Fortunately, these couplers don't suffer from that. Now, that being said, these couplers aren't for everyone. They're not compatible with the majority of couplers available now. Therefore, if you're converting, it's an all or nothing proposition. And as mentioned, they do require a little bit more finesse when setting them up. The rewards, however, far outweigh the work required. Common sentiment amongst the group while we're testing trains at Gary Henshaw's place was that this coupler might be one of the most important advances in N-scale since the Kato mechanism and metal wheel sets. Personally, I haven't been this excited about a product in a very, very long time. Head on over to n-possible.com for more info on the couplers. That's it for this one, you guys. Obviously, the future holds lots of coupler conversions for me. We're going to catch 5801 one last time as it skirts the shores of Island Lake. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. We'll see you next time.